It's Thursday, April 10. In the headlines, industry minister says Jamaica on the fringes of the US-China tariff battle. In business news, central bank profits increased in January to March period. Regionally, Barbados' prime minister raises concerns over some insurers refusing to cover natural disasters. And in sports, West Indies women suffer defeat against Scotland in ICC Cricket World Cup qualifier. And Gary Card withdrawn from Jamaica's Carifta Games team amid injury concerns. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Industry, Investment and Commerce Minister Senator Auburn Hill says Jamaica remains on the fringes of the tariff battle being waged by the Donald Trump administration. U.S. President Donald Trump recently announced country-specific tariffs down to a universal 10% for all trading partners, except China, which he slapped with even higher levies of 125%. On Wednesday, China and the European Union adopted retaliatory tariffs against U.S. goods, fueling fresh market volatility. Speaking at this week's post-cabinet press brief, Minister Hill said Jamaica's geographic location has given it a unique competitive advantage, even as it remains on the fringes.
We think we're in a position to be wise enough not to get into that war. We're not getting into it. We're quietly, silently, strategically looking at how best we get through this with the benefit of Jamaicans at the tip. That's our job.
He says the authorities are still awaiting word on how the tariffs would affect the Caribbean Basin Initiative, CBI. The CBI was established to facilitate the development of stable Caribbean basin economies by providing beneficiary countries with duty-free access to the United States.
The CBI, we're not clear yet. We don't have the documentation that tells us yes or no the CBI is going to continue because it's something that President Reagan, a Republican, put in, or no, CBI has gone away and across the board there's with 10%. And if that happens, we then have to say who else is in the 10% category because the lowest one.
Minister Hill says Jamaica was exploring the opportunities presented by the crisis, some of which emerged from linkages made during the just concluded Expo Jamaica 2025.
I know from my experience running companies and banks that for every obstacle, Mahiri, whether it's in your business or mine, there are 15 to 20 opportunities that come with it. Let's find them and make sure they work for us.
The government is moving to tighten control over the use of demonstration plates in Jamaica, following reports of widespread misuse, some even linked to criminal activity. Blue demonstration plates, or DC plates, are primarily intended for unlicensed vehicles, typically owned by car dealers, to facilitate their movement from one location to another, such as from the wharf or for displaying to potential customers. Speaking at this week's post-cabinet press brief, Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, Daryl Vaz, said complete overhaul is on the way for this legislation.
In many places, these plates are not being used as intended under the Road Traffic Act and associated regulations. Disturbingly, there is credible evidence that demonstration plates are being exploited by individuals to facilitate criminal activities. Compounding the issue, the police are currently unable to trace these plates through their smart check system.
Minister Vaz revealed that Tax Administration Jamaica lacks an accurate count of demonstration plates in circulation, a gap in oversight that has allowed cloning and unauthorized use by criminal elements.
As a result, the government is losing revenue, and the lack of control over this system poses a serious threat to public safety and national security.
In light of this, he says the government will embark on a total revamp of the current system and replace it with a web-based demonstrated permit system.
To address these challenges, legislative amendments will be required to overhaul the system and support a more secure, transparent, and accountable demonstration plate regime.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Welcome to today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, here to bring you the stories shaping the financial world and guiding your journey to smarter business decisions. Let's dive into the top headlines. The Bank of Jamaica's profit jumped to $6.2 billion during the period January 1 to March 25 of this year. The central bank's local assets dropped, however, to $241.9 billion this year from $287.2 billion for the corresponding period last year. Jamaica's net international reserves, which measures the difference between its foreign assets and foreign liabilities, climbed by US $312 million to US $5.79 billion in March. The February figure stood at $5.47 billion. The increase was due to a jump in the country's foreign assets by US $303.7 million to US $5.83 billion in March. Over the period, the country's foreign liabilities fell to US $48.7 million from US $49.4 million in February. The Bank of Jamaica intervened in the foreign exchange market, pumping US $30 million on Wednesday in order to ease the pressure on the dollar. The move was prompted by the perception that the country's trade deficit will widen because of the 10% tariff imposed on Jamaica's export by the United States. Additionally, there are concerns that U.S. immigration policies will have a negative impact on tourism and remittance flows. In corporate movements, Innovative Energy Group is announcing the appointment of Dr. Conrad Miller as President and Chief Executive Officer effective April 14. Previously, Dr. Miller served as Director of Engineering Services among other leadership roles at Jamaica Energy Partners, JB Ethanol, and Windalco. Also, Pulse Investments Limited has advised that Ms. Romay Gordon has resigned as co-managing director and company secretary of Pulse Investments Limited effective March 31, 2025. Pulse has further advised that Ms. Gordon will remain a director of the company and Ms. Safia Cooper will assume the post of managing director. For the trading period ending April 9, 2025, these were the most actively traded stocks. Toll road operator Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with 87,282,198 units traded, representing 82.52% of market sales volume. Media distributor and real estate developer Kintyre Holdings Jamaica Limited with 3,163,186 units traded, representing 5.53% of market sales volume. Alternative energy provider Wigton Energy Limited with 2,216,572 units traded, representing 2.10% of market sales volume. We now shift our focus to the Forex market rate set by the Bank of Jamaica. On April 9, 2025, the Bank of Jamaica reported US $82.75 million purchased and US $80.32 million sold by Forex traders. Forex traders earned $1.11 per dollar, selling the US at $158.79 and buying the US at $157.68. The Canadian dollar netted Forex traders $1.58 per transaction, with selling at $111.56 and buying at $109.98. The British pound yielded Forex traders $7.71 in profits, with selling at $204.55 and buying at $196.84. For our credit report tip of the day, you are doing everything you're supposed to. You're paying down your balances, checking your credit score, asking questions at the bank. But instead of getting help, you're getting blank stares, bounced around departments, or worse, ignored. Let's be honest, rebuilding credit isn't just about numbers. It's about navigating systems that weren't built to support you when you're trying to bounce back. But don't let a few gatekeepers shake your resolve. Stay focused, stay consistent, and build with intention. One of the things you can do is request a credit officer. Ask for someone in the lending or credit department. They're better equipped than frontline staff. Also, ask about credit score simulators. Some banks offer tools that model how different actions affect your score. Use them. Now, rebuilding your financial life as a professional woman over the age of 45 can feel like an uphill battle, especially when life has thrown its fair share of setbacks. The people who are really succeeding are the ones who have a real goal to be wealthy, and you have to fight to stay wealth-minded. So get up, get out, and get your fire back. Here are some ways to create an atmosphere for cash flow using the very life you've lived. One of the things you can do is simplify commitments. Free up energy and time to focus on income-generating projects. And then build a wealth team. That's your accountant, coach, investment advisor, and attorney. And that wraps up today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, reminding you that every financial decision is a step toward your future. Until next time, stay focused, stay informed, and keep striving for success. See you soon.
In regional news, Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, is sounding the alarm on the rising costs and challenges of disaster insurance. She warns that some insurers are now refusing to cover natural disasters, leaving vulnerable nations at risk. She raised the issue at the 5th board meeting of the Loss and Damage Fund. Anista Henry was there and brings us this report.
Prime Minister Mottley says that the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility refused to cover damages Barbados suffered as a result of Hurricane Beryl. She explains that CRIF denied the claims on the basis that storm surges which whipped the coast are not considered wave action.
I'm not sure what it is if it's not wave action, because you can't get storm surge without it coming in as a wave. But the insurance people in CRIF refuse to recognize that we should benefit from 1 cent, in spite of the fact that we had 7 to 9 meter waves, destroyed 40% of our fishing harbor, broke over the breakwaters in the harbor, and sank 2 boats. This damaged badly the Coast Guard base, damaged badly the jetties in the Oystins fishing complex, damaged badly the southern portion of every beach on the west coast of Barbados, every bay, to the point where one leading hotel immediately reported a reduction of $2 million in revenue in the 6 weeks that came immediately after. And that's just one hotel.
Against this background, Prime Minister Mottley says the fund established at COP27 with the aim of providing financial assistance to developing countries most vulnerable to climate change impacts is significantly important.
The only entity that can come to the rescue to countries at scale potentially after a crisis is this Loss and Damage Fund. And if we have to bring you back here to have that meeting with the major philanthropic organizations of the world, we will be happy to host it. But if we are not talking with each other And if we are not looking to move outside of what is normal and what is accepted, then we will become a victim to those who don't believe in what you are fighting for.
And before going to address the board meeting, Prime Minister Marty met with members of the Intimate Hotels of Barbados group. Members raised concerns about the steep increases in the cost of insurance.
They need to access capital in order to refurbish and remain competitive. But if the insurance premium that they're paying puts them in a state of losses, then the ability to be able to get the new oxygen, the new capital, to keep them competitive is at risk. And that is why Barbados has continued to maintain, starting with a colloquium which we had in November 2019, that this issue of insurance is at the center of much of what we have to discuss going forward. And that when a sector or a country or a region becomes uninsurable, they effectively become uninvestable.
CRIF was designed as a regional catastrophe fund for Caribbean governments to limit financial impact of hurricanes and earthquakes to Caribbean governments by quickly providing short-term liquidity when a policy is triggered. Onesta Henry, CBC News.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, Stuart Young, is pushing back against claims that all is lost after the U.S. revoked the OFAC license. Speaking to business leaders on Wednesday, he highlighted significant growth in the energy sector. Sunil Lala reports.
Despite what you're hearing, all of our eggs of Trinidad and Tobago are not in the dragon basket.
At a conference held by the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association on Wednesday morning, Prime Minister Stuart Young quickly responded to comments that TNT's energy future is solely dependent on a dragon gas deal. On Tuesday at a media conference, he announced that the license granted to the government of Trinidad and Tobago by the Office of Foreign Assets Controller OFAC of the United States to pursue the monetization of cross-border gas with Venezuela was revoked. Addressing the business community, Mr. Young said he was disappointed that some have been rejoicing following the announcement.
I'm just going to say very briefly here this morning that despite how unfortunately you see the media headlines, and despite how unfortunately it shocks me still that there are actually people who call themselves citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and they believe in Trinidad and Tobago is what they say, to see people rejoicing at another setback on what we did with Dragon.
But even despite that setback, Prime Minister Young said he was engaged with U.S. policymakers in Washington even after he made the announcement on Tuesday.
Without breaching confidentiality, I was engaged in the conversation with the policymakers in Washington. And that is the type of leadership that is necessary and needed. And it will unfold. The point is, within a matter of hours, we had the opportunity only because of the relationships and the reputation that we have, that we were engaged immediately with those who are making the policy decisions.
He mentioned, though, that despite the revocation of the OFAC license, which affects both the Dragon gas deal and the Coquina Mannequin projects, TNT still has major projects in the pipeline.
You need to speak to your friends in the energy sector and you will see the growth of domestic projects and production of gas over the last few years. Just in the last couple of weeks, you've had the largest producer, BP, FID projects, and also announced significant success in other projects, all of which are the direct result of your government's leadership.
And in addition to this, he noted that other energy companies have been making strides.
You have the same thing going on with EOG. The Mento platform will produce gas shortly in a joint venture with BP. They have announced BP and EOG. The next one, Coconut. You have Perenco that has recently purchased some of BP's aged assets and then come and purchase some of Woodside's aged assets. You've seen that Perenco will do what they can with the stranded gas and produce more.
He also announced that CARICOM will meet on Friday to discuss the recent tariffs imposed by the United States. Sonolala, TTT News.
Antigua and Barbuda's Energy Minister Melford Nicholas has reinforced the government's commitment to transitioning its fleet to electric vehicles. He provided the update on day 3 of the Caribbean Electric Mobility Forum at the John E. St. Louis Finance and Conference Center. High-level talks were held on policy, governance, and access to electric vehicle markets. Jamie J. Roche reports.
On day 3 of the Caribbean Emergency Mobility Forum, the air is buzzing, and not with gas fumes, but electric ambition. Energy Minister John Melford Nicholas sets the tone, laying out Antigua and Barbuda's plan to phase out government internal combustion engine vehicles and go all in on electric.
From the electronic vehicle standpoint, through our Department of Energy and working with the consultants, there is a SLIM project that I'm sure you'll become acquainted with if it has not yet been unveiled to you. That's going to allow us to, first of all, set the leadership from the government standpoint, that we begin now to transition the fleet of government vehicles over this period of time to one where we have become the embodiment of the transition, that we live the talk.
The goal, a 100% EV government fleet by 2030. That's over 1,000 vehicles. A bold move, but not a solo journey.
As government, I think we have to have many levels of stakeholder engagement to be able to get to those outcomes. But it's not changing our trajectory, and we're going to be dealing with the issues as they come up, and we move, working in partnership with all of our stakeholders to resolve these issues. But the government is certainly prepared to continue to provide that leadership.
And it's not just government's fleet. Taxi and bus operators are getting a helping hand too, with charging stations in the pipeline and even possible updates to building codes requiring EV infrastructure.
We are working with the West Indies company to ensure that they can put some of these charging stations in place. And clearly where the taxi operators populate, certainly at the BC International Airport and at other areas, we're going to try to see if we can get to that position.
Across the region, countries like Grenada, St. Lucia and Belize are hitting the accelerator. Some have waived import duties or started training firefighters to respond to EV-related emergencies. Mr. Nicholas and other panelists agree. Regional collaboration isn't just smart, it's necessary.
I don't see any reason why in this particular endeavor we cannot have pooled arrangements where we're going to be doing procurement, whether it is on the vehicles themselves or some of the replacement parts.
The road to electric mobility isn't without speed bumps, but with cross-border teamwork, stakeholders believe it can become much smoother. Jamie J. Roche, ABS News.
In sports, we opened the innings with cricket, as despite a Herculean personal performance in the West Indies women's opening game of the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup qualifiers, which ended in a loss to Scotland, Captain Hayley Matthews emphasized that team victory remains her primary goal. Nasir Mohammed has the story.
The defeat has now raised the stakes for the team, but Matthews remains optimistic about their chances, provided they can maintain consistency moving forward.
I mean, I guess it's a good start to the tournament, but yeah, at the same time, would have loved to win the game even more. Probably would have preferred to score 0 and take no wickets if it meant that we were going to win the match. But it just means that we're going to have to really lock in right now and perform really well in these next 4 matches. It is probably a tournament that's going to be up and down when it comes to results, so we still have a pretty good opportunity once we're consistent going forward.
The West Indies women now face 4 crucial games that will determine their fate for one of the 2 qualifying spots for the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup in India later this year.
Yeah, I think we're even more motivated now, obviously knowing that these are must-win games, and yeah, we obviously really want to be able to come out of this not only qualifying but hopefully winning it as well, and we still have an opportunity to do that if we have a really good remainder of the tournament. So I think everyone's super motivated. We have a lot to play for, and that's all we really need.
We stay with cricket as the International Cricket Council reports that the ICC Men's T20 World Cup held last summer injected $1.66 billion into the economies of the USA and the West Indies, underscoring the tournament's financial and developmental impact. Held June 1 to June 29, 2024, the event features 55 matches across 9 host locations. In athletics, Jamaica's Carifta Games team has seen some last-minute changes, with Champs Class 1 100 meters winner Gary Card withdrawn from the squad. Reports suggest injury concerns may be behind the decision after he struggled in the Champs final and missed the 200 meters event. The Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association released an updated list confirming several adjustments. Rihanna Lewis and Jada Robinson were also removed from the team, while Jamal Stevenson and Antonio Powell step in for the under-20 100 meters. Shaquane Gordon will now focus solely on the 110 meters hurdles. In the field events, Nikara Johnson joins the under-17 high jump lineup, and Kai Anthony Hall has been added to the triple jump. The Carifta Games take place in Port of Spain, Trinidad from April 19 to April 21. That's it for the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thanks for watching.